All right, Doreen Matos, you won. I said I wasn't going to do a Facebook Live until Monday, and I really just there was something that was bugging me that I've been focusing on, which is like the microbiome, the microbiota. I just woke up, no coffee at all, not even the jelly juice. But I was thinking about the microbiome, the microbiota, infection, antibodies, and then the salt water, and nutrition, and then proteins, protozoa, parasites, fungus, bacteria, viruses. And then what we're dealing with right now with the coronavirus, and everybody's freaking out. Okay. So, but more to the point, really, I have to expand upon is the homeopathy or homeopathy world that is treating or trying to mitigate the complications of a virus with major carbon-based type of protocols that will feed the fungus. Because that was originally what I focused on in the beginning, was the fungus, was the candida. And then we narrowed it down that sugar and sugar substitutes, which is basically carbon type of stuff, carbon-based type of entities or material, heavy metals, which is trace minerals. So that's why your ferments were so stinky, and that's why they made you bloated in the beginning when you drank the pink salt, because of all of the heavy metals that were in the pink salt. So it's just like there's like so much stuff that I want to make sure you guys understand and really simplify. Because if it's not simplified, then it goes over people's heads. If you go into so much detail on everything, people tend to check out. So, I try to do the best way to speak to everybody's listening. You don't always have to go into such great detail of everything, but as long as people get the bigger picture, and even the little details that you need to cover don't have to be complicated. Okay. And so I know that in the last couple of years, my writing and the stuff that I was focusing on was very complicated because I didn't get all the connections. It was like separate, compartmentalized ideas that I didn't conjoin together because I didn't see the relationship, but I knew they were related, but I didn't know how to connect them all together. So now we are going to connect them all together, so that way you see the bigger picture, and that way it makes it easier for you to explain to your friends and family. So microbiome and microbiota, the microbiome is what I was saying, the viruses, the bacteria, the fungus, the parasites, the protozoa, the proteins, and that is everything in your external universe and in your internal universe. And then the biochemistry from those. So even they have their own biochemistry, and then there's like, it goes into infinite fractals. So you have like a single cell organism that has a biochemistry of like acid, right? And then it goes into bigger picture. And so the bigger picture of biochemistry, when you start from a single celled organism like a protein, is made up of acid. Okay. And then you start building on top of that. So then it becomes a fatty acid, amino acids, prohormones, which is nutrition, and then minerals. And then you have all the different microbiota, which are very specific to then the microbiome. So the microbiome is the genetic material of all the microbes of bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and viruses, and bacteria, and proteins, and parasites, and then that live on the inside the human body. The number of genes in all the microbes in one person's microbiome is 200 times the number of genes in the human genome. So of course you're going to have some kind of influence on your genetic data, your body, mind, and spirit, all that. The microbiome may weigh as much as 5 pounds. Oh, I believe it. Believe me. Okay. So is normal flora the same as normal microbiota? Types of human microbiota include bacteria, archaea, fungi, protists, and viruses. Okay, so people say, oh yeah, viruses are bad. No, they're not bad. But why you're seeing everyone freak out with the coronavirus is because they have pre-existing conditions. I had 3 different attacks from some kind of virus in my environment, and I definitely had a major release. I was coughing, I was sneezing, blowing my nose on a continuous basis for about 24 hours, 18 to 24 hours. And then that was it. There was no headache. There was no other types of weaknesses. It was just straight up, the body was like sneezing. Like my dog, when she sneezes, she goes into these sneeze attacks, which is so funny because they're saying that dogs or the animals can also catch coronavirus. But sometimes she'll get a sneezing attack where she just sneezes over and over. And you can feel the force of your animal sneezing, trying to get out the antigen. Okay. So anyway, so that's what the microbiota. So you know the difference between the two. Okay. So there's specific things in the microbiota, in the microbiome, that is called microbiota. And then also too, homeopathy. Okay. Homeopathy is, like I was saying, is when people are taking all of these types of heavy metals and trace minerals and carbon-based types of remedies that then feed the fungus. So when someone's taking elderberry syrup and they're taking turmeric and honey and all the different detoxes, aluminum silicate and all of that, it feeds the fungus. So people are actually causing more harm to their body because they're causing more imbalances because they're feeding one type of life form that is becoming overabundant. Okay. And so, and then fecal transplants. Somebody on my Facebook, which I let go because they weren't getting it, and they kept giving me suggestions that were just really not very, very helpful. And they didn't want to get the book, and and I don't know if they were really following closely, but they just like to quip every so often. Excuse my hair, it's awful. But the thing with fecal transplants and microbiome is that if you're going to get a fecal transplant, get it from someone on the jelly juice. But then what's the point? Why would you go get a fecal transplant from someone on the jelly juice who's basically healthier than those that are out there? Why would you get it from someone other than someone that's healthy? Okay? Because when you get a fecal transplant from someone who has predispositions and other issues, you're taking on their baggage. What would be the point? Why don't you create your own baggage, but a better baggage? Why would you take on somebody else's predispositions? Okay. And so I'm just like, you know what? There's no point in any kind of transplant, but hey, people do cures all the time. But remember, cures are temporary. Cures only last so long, and they're not guaranteed because eventually the body is going, the true intentions of the way your body is going to take over. So you can only do things on a temporary basis when it comes to cures. The jelly juice is not a cure, and we've established that many different times over again. Okay. And then when you think about the salt and the water, salt water on the ocean, if you didn't have salt in the earth, if you didn't have salt in the ocean, because it's not just salt on the earth, salt by itself isn't necessarily revolutionary. I mean, you have a salt laying down, on the ground, it just kind of sits there. It doesn't kill mold. It doesn't do anything, or it doesn't control mold. It's just kind of there. Maybe it dries up the air. But when you mix it with water, it's then what helps control bacteria, like fungus, like not all bacteria. Some bacteria do thrive in the ocean, like obviously lactobacillus. Okay, because in a lot of ways, the jelly juice is like the ocean, and it thrives in an anaerobic environment. So there are some bacteria that are very, very resilient and can handle high salinity, and that's where the first protein was found, was in the ocean 3.9 billion years ago, and it's made up of like 10 amino acids. Okay, but then you have like other life forms that are controlled by the salt. That's why when you take the jelly juice, you start seeing the parasites disappear. They're being, not that they're getting killed. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but they're being washed out of your body. Now, of course, you're always going to have some parasites. How many? I couldn't tell you. But the body is made up of a microbiome. There are so many organisms on the outside of your body, on the inside of your body, and in your environment. And you're supposed to live symbiotically with them. So when you get an infection, it's because you have an overabundance of a type of organism, whether it's a fungal infection, a bacterial infection. There's no such thing as antibody infection. When you have antibodies that attack tissue, is because the amount of the proteins that are glomming on to the antigen. They're not being released from the body, so essentially they agglutinate again, and then they reinfect the body. And the body then works hard again to create more antibodies, and then they glutinate, and it becomes this never-ending cycle until a person has so many antibodies in their blood that it clogs up the capillaries and the arteries, and then it stops the oxygen from getting to the brain and the heart, or the antibodies build up so much fluid in the lungs, and the person is that weak they drown in their own fluids. Okay, so antibodies aren't like, you don't get an antibody infection, because infection is where the antibodies get created to go and fight, and then allows the body to heal if it is given what it needs. But when you have too many antibodies, like I said, that's when the body starts taking on antigen that it's not able to release, and that's what destroys the body. So infection is really an overabundance of organisms that are attacking good cell tissue. Okay, so at least you understand the difference. And I had in my head to understand the difference, and maybe I did on a superficial level, but not so much like, oh, okay, I get the difference. Now it makes sense, though I knew it from a different perspective. But it's really bringing it all together so you guys understand that you are made up of the earth. You're made up of all the proteins, protozoa. You're made up of viruses. You're made up of parasites. You're made up of fungus. You're made up of bacteria. Okay, so you don't want, like right now what people are doing is they're trying to tell everybody to go wash your hands all the time. And I get it, but let me tell you, when you keep washing your hands and you're not creating immunity, and you're not gonna be able to escape this coronavirus. I mean, washing your hands for 20 minutes, holy shit. There's no way to escape your environment. But that's right now what everybody is doing. But then you got to understand, people that are so weak that if they get exposed to it, like it's like prolonging the inevitable. You know, I'm not saying like you shouldn't wear a mask if you are that sick and if you're spewing out all your mucus everywhere, of course, because you're being considerate. But I'm telling you, there is no way to escape your environment. Once something like a virus, however it's released, once it's released, now it's a matter of time where you're going to have to meet that virus in your environment. And there's only so much washing your hands, only so much sequestering or quarantine. There's only so much of these types of protective measures that you can implement before eventually it's going to make its way to you, and you're going to have to deal with it. And so it's kind of happening right now, I guess. I mean, we have 200 suspect cases in Ohio, but other places like California, New York, and Washington and all that, they're getting the confirmed cases. But I think it's been confirmed. I think it's already in the environment. If they were to test everybody that died from a stroke or a heart attack the last 3 months, I think they would see that there is definitely, the virus has been in the environment for a while, but no one's going to do that unless it's specifically requested. And even then, they don't want to know. They'd rather just leave well enough alone, I'm sure, the next of kin. So now it's understanding that you've got to adapt to the new environment. And the Jilly Juice has that salt, that energy, that balancing force that will allow you to, it's like a wash, like an internal ecosystem wash. That's what the Jilly Juice is, because it's its own microbiome. The jars of Jilly Juice is a microbiome. And it's the right biochemistry to wash out your cells and your own microbiome to keep the bacteria under control. No, it doesn't kill bacteria, but it keeps it under control. Because there are some minerals out there that will render some of the bacteria chemically inert, but the spores are still there, but they're not going to work to your advantage. So that's when so what's happening is when you overfeed one type of bacteria one type of entity like fungus, that's when people get infections, fungal infections. And that's why you see skin issues. That's why you see all of these diagnoses, because they are from the overabundance of the bacteria, the protozoa, the proteins, the parasites, the fungus, the bacteria. So that's why you have to have the salt and the water and the micro and macro nutrition and the probiotic or the lactic acid to keep the balance, to keep relative homeostasis in your gut, then you have to heal and you have to feel. And you can't be taking all of these homeopathic remedies that will then overfeed the fungus. Okay. So there's definitely a balance to it. And what I'm seeing right now with the coronavirus is that people are recommending colloidal silver. They're recommending all of these homeopathic remedies are going to cause a major bloom of fungus in people's bodies. Because when you look at the chemistry of what feeds fungus, it is carbon. Okay. So salt water isn't carbon. Salt water is, and cabbage and kale and all that and probiotics, but salt water is NaCl, sodium chloride. It is not carbon, it's sodium chloride. Okay? Diamonds are made and graphite are made from carbon-based materials. Sugar is carbon-based and it feeds fungus because it's carbon, and that's why you need a mixture of sugar and salt. And so that's why we don't have the diet anymore, because some of you are missing so much of the carbon because you've been mitigating carbohydrates and gluten and pasta, and you've been staying away from the breads and staying away from all these different sugars because of diabetes and whatever. But what's really missing is the amount of good white iodized or non-iodized salt. You're missing the sodium chloride. So all the cancer, disease, and chronic illness really stem from basically hyponatremia. Okay, now an actual pure diagnosis of hyponatremia is where you have no salt in your diet, and it's a diagnosable thing. But the cancer, disease, and chronic illness is people, and aging are people who are living on low sodium diets or high sodium diets with high malabsorption. Okay, so when you have the rate of malabsorption far greater than the rate of absorption, and you have a high sodium diet, it doesn't matter if you're eating all these processed foods that are full of sodium, or you're putting so much salt on your food or your vegetables. If you have malabsorption and you're aging and degrading, then it's not going to matter, because you're not absorbing the electrolytes, you're not taking in the necessary minerals and nutrients to repair the body at an aggressive level. You're not absorbing and sustaining and keeping on reserve. So when you do come upon a virus in the environment, you have enough reserves to push out the things that don't belong. But some of you have so much malabsorption that you could have a high sodium diet, but it's not going to make a difference. You still have the characteristics of somebody with hyponatremia. Okay? Because when you look at hyponatremia, it's heart attacks. It is people who do not have enough of that energy force in the body to keep moving the blood, to keep the fluids out of their lungs. It's like you're seeing them, they're like a walking heart attack that's not going to survive. Like, I'm watching a friend of mine who's about my age, actually she's younger, and she says she's a walking heart attack. She was just diagnosed with menopause. And I'm like, she's my age and she has menopause, she's triggering menopause. She has to wear a bracelet around her wrist that I guess monitors her blood pressure, and she has to wear it 24/7. And she says, and all of her friends who are older are saying, stay away from the salt, stay away from the salt, stay away from the salt. You got to live longer, stay away from the salt. And I'm like, oh my God, what she needs is the salt. But you can't tell somebody who is on the verge of a freaking heart attack that she needs the salt, she needs the nutrition. So I just got to watch this play out, because you can't do anything. But that's why people suffer from aging, cancer, disease, chronic illness, because they have malabsorption, they don't believe in the salt, or they have low sodium diets, and they have so many predispositions that they can't keep up on it. And that is why you see the fear of the coronavirus out there. Okay? And I don't have any fear of the coronavirus. I went out last night with some friends. We went to a golfing, someplace where you drive balls. Pretty cool. It's pretty fun. And, it's like, there's a lot of young people there. It was crowds. I don't know if they're going to have quarantines in the future where you can't have anybody congregating together. But I can mix in a crowd, and I have no fear of catching anything, because my body has its very strong defense system, that I'm not going to be one of those that have to live in a bubble, whether you're washing your hands for 20 minutes or you're putting a freaking chem suit on because in order to go outside. I'm not going to be one of those people. And those of you on the J Juice are not going to be one of those people either. And that is the point of J Juice, is that we adapt to our environment so efficiently that we won't even notice the changes. Though if there is an aggressive virus like this coronavirus, or the influenza A and B, which I think I've experienced all three, but I couldn't confirm it because I'm not getting tests. But, if you get exposed to any of those aggressive, you'll feel it, but it's not going to sustain any damage. You will not sustain any long-term damage. Your body will just go through an upgrade because that's what it is. It's an upgrade. It's only a downgrade to those that have issues. And that's why you see the fear. Okay? So for us to get the body, mind, and spirit so well balanced, we have to understand the connections between our environment outside and inside to our internal ecosystem, inside, and understand the elements and the organisms that we have to live symbiotically with, and understand how to balance them, not kill them. If you're trying to kill your parasites, you're trying to kill any proteins, you're trying to kill the protozoa, you're trying to kill the bacteria, if you're trying to kill anything, like kill something with a homeopathic remedy, you are actually killing yourself. And that is not the point of J-Juice. It's about balancing the elements so everything can live symbiotically together and you stay alive potentially indefinitely. And that's the point of Jelly Juice, is potential indefinite life if you understand how to balance the elements and balance the organisms and the microbiome correctly. And that is understanding what antibodies are and as well as what the microbiome is. They're not pathogenic. Bacteria is not pathogenic unless you have imbalances. And so that's why people get antibodies for imbalances in their minerals, imbalances in their acids, imbalances in the bacteria, the fungus, the protozoa, the parasites, the viruses. When you have imbalances in all of that, then they're going to look like diagnosable diseases. And that's when Mother Nature brings in things that will try to recycle you back in the earth, and then man tries to step in and manipulate. And he does it successfully for a certain amount of time. But eventually man-made law is trumped by natural law. Natural law will always win no matter what. But there is a combination of the two because that's the society we live in. But remember, man-made law will only last so long until Mother Nature says, okay, I've had enough of you messing with me. We keep giving you stays of execution, and you're not listening. So see you later. Bye-bye. Okay? Happy Sunday. Talk to you later. Bye.